one of the thoughts that comes up is, um, frequently when people do this, the the classic take on it is first Fetter goes, well, so do two and three.
Yeah.
Well, I've spent since July, actually prior to July, but especially since July, um, just focusing on identification and first Fetter. And as far as I can tell, Fetters two and three, I mean, that's not even that's not even up for discussion. I mean, that's sort of like, well, we'll get to that later. Right now, there's this first Fetter, and so it just feels kind of like being. I don't like the way this sounds because this isn't really quite how it feels, but I don't know how else to say it. Kind of feel like I'm stuck in first Fetter land, you
I
know.
hear you. I hear you. It's tricky, especially when we have the idea that one, two, and three are supposed to fall at once, because from what we see, the only way that that happens is if we're defining two and three in the very classical Buddhist sense of two is just doubt with the Dharma or doubt of your ability to do this. And then so the idea is you see through the sense of self. So now, of course, you've lost doubt in whether the Dharma is true because you know from your own experience. You've recognized, oh, yes, of course, this is what he's saying is true. I've seen that's true. And there's no more doubt that I can do this. It's possible to become awakened. So two falls with it. And then three, being the rites and rituals, is like praying to a certain deity or paying people in order to, get a more uh, favorable karma or something, so that you might be able to lighten your load, or astrology, or you know bowing, doing prostrations for the sake of enlightenment, that sort of thing. You just recognize that you don't need to do any outside thing. No outside thing is having an effect on this because it's something that you have just done yourself, so to speak. There's your non-self, but that it's something which is entirely internal. It can entirely be done without the need for some other higher power, or intervening party to help out. So then that one falls with it. So if we're using that purely Buddhist context like that, then yes, the first three would fall together. The way Pranilla started doing it, and the way I've also found to be super, super useful, and so many other people, is to really expand the definition of two and three. And because they're things that eventually have to be worked with, they have to be worked with, but they just tend to be kicked down the road by a lot of other practices. So two is not just the doubt in the practice, it's also all of the emotional doubt and all of the emotional, as we talk about the starting point, and the verbal indicators and all of this stuff that's underneath there, which is formulating our worldview, is all based off of this Fetter 2 issue. And ironically, there's a bit of a cycle between Fetter 1 and 2, especially
Hmm.
because Fetter Fetter 1 we look at as being all of the main identification, and Fetter 2 we think of just being the emotional stuff. But ironically, it's a lot of that emotional stuff. It's the old traumas and the old beliefs and not being good enough and all of that, which is actually keeping that first Fetter sense of self alive. It's that thing which is keeping you from fully being able to let go of that, because there's still this undercurrent of negative self-belief or lack of, you know, a lot of people have come in with, we have to develop a healthy, positive sense of self before we can fully let go of it. And a lot of people who have had traumatic upbringings, or who have had a lot of depression or stress or anxiety in their life, have never actually developed a functioning, healthy sense of ego or a healthy sense of self. And so that is keeping them from being able to have the security and the safety internally to know that they can let go of the feelings of self, the sort of safety net that we have, and be okay. And so it keeps them with this cycle of fear where you don't want to be able to get rid of the sense of self. You don't get want to get rid of the sense of interiority. Like
Mm.
this is my safe space that I can retreat to my thoughts when everything is batshit crazy out there. I can always retreat inside my head, or that, thoughts might be really, um, really chaotic and really awful, but at least that might have been the only thing that you had to cling to earlier in your life is your thoughts. And so you just stick with them. And so you have to be able to have that sense of real grounded security and okayness and a feeling of being good enough before you can get rid of all of those safety nets of selfing. So that's why we see people bouncing back and forth. You've clearly seen through the First Fetter, right? You've clearly seen that there is no self anytime you look for it, that there
Right.
is just no feeling of self in many, many ways. You have had really clear experiences of where there's just nothing there is self-wise. You've recognized that you are not your thoughts, that you are not synonymous with your body. You've broken all of these different parts of the emotional bondage, basically, that you have this, you recognize that when these emotions come up, but they're not actually speaking about you. That's not that there's something there that is completely synonymous with the emotions that, like, instead of it being I am sad, you just recognize that there's sadness coming up. And what is that? Oh, it's sensation in the eyes and it's feeling in the belly. And it's that there's the difference in the emotional weather pattern coming through and the identification with that emotional weather pattern. So I would say it's raining outside. I wouldn't say I am raining, right? But there our traditional way of talking is I am really sad right now. I am angry. I am, feeling hostile and emotional. There's the identification. Sadness can come with no identification. I was just going to say it. It's more of what we deal with when we talk about like the interior feeling and that sort of thing. It's sort of split up between 6, 7, and 8.
Mm.
Uh,
Okay.
basically. So it's something that is definitely not a disqualifying factor for saying that Fetter one is pretty well taken care of. Um, but I know there's also some emotional stuff underneath there that you've been doing really good working with from the sounds of it. Um, but that is going to help clear up some more of those levels of identification that might be there in Fetter one. Um, and you know, it's so normal for people to have experiences of 6 and 7 and even 8 and then still find that okay, we're back to level 1 now for for something because something else will pop up that just needs to be seen. But that's why we're so adamant about saying that it's not that you're going back to first grade, it's that you're just seeing a deeper level of something that you weren't able to see before because
Uh,
now more of this stuff is cleared up and now, oh, never felt that before, never saw that one. There's a level.
okay.
So don't get hung up on that. Just, work with what is coming up and then let that be the place that you're working with. Because there's an issue where if we get hung up on the idea that I am currently stuck at Fetter one, that is right there creating a you who is able to move back and forth up a ladder and is consistently in one place. If you are feeling identified with level one or Fetter one at this point, in that moment, in this particular iteration, there is a Fetter one lens in effect, right? There's this feeling of being a self that is here right now. If 5 minutes from now, all of a sudden everything collapses and it's two-dimensional and you don't feel like a self at all, you don't feel like there's even anything separate from the wall over there, it's just sight appearing, that is a Fetter 6 experience. That is Fetter 6 lens has been let go of. In that moment, that is the way that the body, mind, organism, and everything is expressing or appearing. But it doesn't mean that there is a you who is now sixth fetter you, or ready to work on the seventh fetter you. It's just this temporary appearance. And so holding it so lightly that it doesn't matter, that as long as there's an idea that I have crossed a fetter, I have broken a fetter, I have gotten past this and can never go back there again, just indicates this sense of a permanent self who is able to learn something, fix something, be better at something.
As far as the work with the first fetter and 2 and 3, I guess what I'm wondering is, setting aside and this is with the idea of trying to find a way of wrapping up.
Yeah.
Um, what do we say about that? How do we understand that? I mean, do we just say, okay, set Fetters 2 and 3 will take care of themselves if we keep doing the work that we're doing that's addressing an identification? Or, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but at the same time, I also don't have any idea how Fetters 2 and 3 fit into the scheme. I'm going to pick it up.
Sure. Yeah. So that's a really good question. So we call the first three fetters the foundational fetters. And I think it's really helpful to look at them all kind of at the same time. It's not the hierarchy of I have to work with one and then two and then three. There are three things that are all basically, it's almost like a triangle. So you have the the um the first fetter with all of its different types of identification that we think of in the gross levels of identification. But then the fetter two is your emotional identification, which is, again, it's the things about me, of me being a shameful person, a guilty person, a very fearful person. The things where I have this first fetter, we talk about a lot of the narrative stuff, but the second fetter is really where that narrative has some hooks. It's like,
Oh, that makes sense.
good. Yeah. So, I remember this time when I was 5 and this happened. Okay. But I remember when I was 5 and this happened, and I realized then that I am just this terrible human being, or I was embarrassed in front of the whole school. And now I felt that, and I still remember that. So that's giving that first fetter identity, it's hooks. It's giving that the
Right, how they support and feed each other.
exactly. And then the third fetter is all of the things that we do to keep from feeling the emotional turbulence of fetter two. So it's like, if I feel like I am really ashamed of myself, and I'm gonna go like I'm a shameful person. Now, in my particular case, I feel like the reason that I'm shameful is because I have 20 extra pounds of fat on my stomach. So I'm gonna use, doesn't matter, everybody has a thing, but it's like you're going to point to whatever that thing is that you're going to put as the reason why you are shameful. It might be that I'm shameful because I'm addicted to a drug or an alcohol. I'm shameful because I'm too overweight. I'm shameful because I'm not good enough at my job. Whatever it is. So you take that thing and we do something to try to distract from that. And so the third fetters, the rites and rituals, the habits that we have. So if my thing is I feel shameful, and the reason for that is because I am 20 pounds of fat on me, I'm going to start dieting and exercising for the purpose of trying to get rid of that feeling of shame. If I lose that weight, now I'm not going to be shameful anymore. Well, that's not true. The root of shame
Right.
is still underneath there. You're just going to find something else to blame if that 20 pounds is gone. So then I'm going to blame, um, well, I'm shameful because I'm alone. I should be in a relationship. So then third fetter, you're going to go and join a dating site so you can meet somebody who tries to, to prove to yourself that you're not really the shameful thing of fetter two. And so you're constantly doing something to try to fix that sense. And all of that is still tying together this sense of identification. So
Right.
it's really just a triangle that's self-supporting.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I was thinking about that analogy that people give about the three-legged stool. So,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So we kind of work on it all at the same time because it's all interrelated.
That's great.
Amazing. So you can be aware all throughout your day. Anything that time that feels like you're doing something for a purpose. That's third fetter.
Ah, okay.
I'm doing, I'm practicing guitar and I'm doing scales. I hate doing scales, but I'm doing them so I can be better at doing something else. Okay, well, you notice the ulterior motive behind it. It's all to reinforce this. I'm going to get something out of this. And which, again, doing something for a purpose, third fetter, is reinforcing this I who is going to get something better out of it once I get this thing. I am going to be better, which just reinforces the first fetter.
Right. I was going to say it all shores up the I entity.
Yeah, exactly. So
And
big old triangle.